Well, good evening and welcome to the Mitchell Sentinel podcast. We kind of took a week off last week, too busy, but today we're going to talk about Cowboys. And I think not just Cowboys from the area, but just Cowboys in general. Is that what your plan is, Dad?
Yep, that's what the plan is, but before we start talking about Cowboys, first came the explorers that came out here to explore this new land and mapping and discovering all the different things, and mostly they were looking for fur-bearing animals. The beavers being the one primary they were looking for because the beaver pelts were really in demand for hats. And they made the beaver hats out of the beaver, of course. And then, they actually trapped the beaver until it was almost extinct out here. They just kept trapping. Well, the trappers, they would go back east every now and then, and when they got back there, they was telling people about, hey, man, this is a beautiful country, mountains, streams, timber, all this stuff, everything. So the people said, well, maybe it might be a good thing. We might want to move out there and do something different than what we're doing. And they painted a pretty rosy picture, but as they were painting this picture, you have to remember that the trappers were trapping in some of the most pristine land out here because that's the habitat and where the beavers live. Yeah. So they got out here and there were prairies and there were deserts and
well, they didn't understand what the journey was going to take to get to those pristine places, I suppose.
Yeah, they was just about the only thing that they got was that disappointment was coming when they started out on the trip. So the pioneers came out.
So you're referring to the Oregon Trail?
Right, yeah. They came out, and actually the Cowboys had probably started a little earlier than that because some of the big land bearings, mostly down the southwest, not too much in the far west, but down in the southwest there were some big ranches down there like Goodnight, and there were some other guys. I mean, we're talking 180,000 acres, and they were running like 30,000 cattle.
Well, and also the Spanish influence or the Mexican influence from California.
Yeah, well,
they were there a lot longer, and that's where a lot of the cowboy stuff comes from.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then the Civil War actually produced a lot of cowboys we don't think about either because the Civil War, the black slaves lost their jobs, but they gained their freedom, and so they didn't have a whole lot of choice down south. So a lot of them migrated out west, and they had worked stock on a lot of the plantations and everything, so they were already pretty well trained cowboys. So
a lot of black cowboys.
Yeah, I think they said I read in Time Life books that they 1 in 3 cowboys was either black or Mexican.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So. But, they were a pretty hardy bunch. But also a lot of the whites came from the South, too, because they had been uprooted, and they became cowboys. The land barons, they were having a hard time holding on to their land, and the sodbusters were coming, and the government opened a Homestead Act in 1862, and if you came out here, they would give you 160 acres of land. And then
a lot of those land barons kind of claimed that as open range.
Yeah, they did, and that created a lot of problems there, and there was a lot of animosity between them, and a lot of killing, I think, because the way the land barons claimed the land and kept the land was with power, and sheer power. That they made their own law, and so and they actually did not want to see people out here because they knew that their days numbered at the big land baron things, and so they had the power, they had the money, and whether they had to do it legally or non-legally, that's what happens. And
well, that's kind of the archetype of most old westerns. You have the rich land baron who doesn't like the folks coming in, and then you got Clint Eastwood coming in.
Oh yeah, well yeah, that works. But they had a small army to protect them, and these cowboys were extremely loyal to and they rode for the brand, as they say. The vaqueros came up from Mexico. The black cowboys came from the south, and so they added to the mix. Uh, and Cowboys were all pretty tough, hard, and knowledgeable, and they knew their trade. And years applying that trade and the genetics that were bred into that trade with their forefathers and everything, they became outstanding cowboys. But troubling times when the cowboy was caught in the middle, and you had all these different factions were having, and they were in range wars, and they were in sheep and cattle wars, Indians, and diseases that they might run onto out here. But the cowboys had to furnish their own equipment. That's something that it's hard to believe. The only thing that the landowner usually furnished was the horses.
Well, and it's kind of like an independent contractor type of job.
Yeah, know? But it wasn't very well paid for.
Well, no.
I think the story says, the wages for a cowboy was 30 and found.
Well, and these guys were younger fellas and probably looking for adventure, and they could probably just say, well,
Yeah, some of them were 14, 15 years old.
Yeah, and, they didn't want a job. Well, there'd be another guy coming along to take it. So the price probably wasn't that high.
When they put one of them young guys on the night guard, I always maintained that when they went out there singing, they were not only singing to the cows and trying to cool them down, but they were trying to reassure themselves also, because I'm sure some of them were scared.
There's lots of things to be scared of in the dark in the West.
And if you were still singing, you probably weren't dead. So maybe that way it worked out really good.
I suppose that would be true.
But like I say, the cowboy had to furnish his own equipment, and we're talking, you're talking saddle back in the days, weren't really expensive, but, when you're only making $30-40 a month, it didn't take long. Boots were probably $8 to $12 a pair, a good pair of boots. Then they had to do their hackamores and their bits and bridles and spurs and all that stuff. So they had to really scamper for the money they were making. They have something on. They had 2 or 3 different kind of chaps that they wore. And these chaps, especially down south, man, some of them cactus and everything, and the bushes all had big thorns on them, so they had to be pretty heavy duty. And also they provided protection from that. They had a chap called, it was called shotgun chaps, and they were climb-in chaps.
So they were all the way.
Just pulled them on kind of like a leather breeches or something.
Kind of like a pair of pants.
Yeah. And then they had the bat wings, and they were wraparounds, and then they snapped in the back of your legs. They were a little deal. And then they had what they call the woolies. Now, I thought, when I got into this thing, I thought, well, woolies were just for show off, and everything. But no, woolies were when they was in really cold weather.
They keep their legs warm.
Yeah, they had the wool off the sheep usually on that thing, or just wool, period. And sometimes they were covered with fur. And if you're out there and it's 35, 40 below zero and no place to get out of the wind or nothing, you wore your protection right there. The early boots were flat heels, but as cowboy lifestyle, they kind of morphed into different things. So they had to have a pointed toe. That was so it would come out of the stirrup easy and wouldn't hang up. Also, they made the heel higher, and then
Why do you suppose that heel was higher for?
I really don't know. Maybe. I'm not that.
Well, you see like on roping boots, they got like a 3/4 inch heel.
Yeah.
And then the hardcore cowboy boots,
the working boots.
They came up high and then had it tapered back and down.
Maybe the shorter the cowboy, the higher the heel.
Might have something to do with the spurs too. How they fit on there. Yeah. I've always wondered though, because the biggest problem was just getting hung up in the stirrup. You fall off and be drugged to death.
That's why you wanted your probably your boots maybe a size bigger than what you really wore.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. If the boots stuck in the stirrup and it let your leg out, you were in pretty good shape. You might have a chance. But if you didn't, you hung up in that. And I read Oscar Shoemaker. He a local guy here, landowner. He owned what they call a hash knife ranch then. But he got his he got his foot hung up in the stirrup, and he died from.
Oh, he died from it.
Yeah, he died.
Oh, he
died
dang. Well, that's what I heard was the main reason why they always carried a 6-shooter.
Yeah.
Was to shoot the horse.
Well, maybe, yeah.
If they got drugged. I heard that somewhere.
Well, evidently he didn't have a 6-shooter.
No.
He
got drugged to death up on the ranch then.
Yeah, up in there someplace. Yeah.
Huh.
So you wanted to do that. Spurs was most of the American Cowboys did not wear the Mexican type spurs with the big rowels and stuff like that. They had the less rowels and the work spurs were a little bit simpler. Dress spurs were they were pretty well fancied up with silver inlay and
Sunday go to meeting spurs.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Just I guess if you wanted to really impress somebody or something, but most of the time, Cowboys didn't impress anybody and didn't want to impress anybody. I guess unless they were looking for a new job
or a lady.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the two. We'll get into that. Most of the ladies were that the Cowboys knew were mostly professional.
In the early days.
Yeah, in the early days, yeah.
I'm sure of that.
And then the saddles, they all did a pretty good saddle. And the saddle had to be able to last a long time and had to be comfortable fit because you were going to be spending maybe up to 18 hours a day in that daggone saddle.
And let me tell you from experience, there isn't nothing worse than an uncomfortable saddle.
Yeah, I never did know because I've
never been on a horse.
No. That's one good thing my grandfather got out of the ranching business for. I got old enough to get interested in it. So thank you, Lord. Bits and head stalls usually depended on the taste and the usage that they were going to use. They could be fancied up too a little bit, but it worked out that way for them. I don't know. I think I'm going to get into some of the poems I wrote about cowboys. Now, we've done this one before. But
so you're going to read a poem?
Yeah, I'm going to do a little poem here, a couple of them maybe.
So that's kind of funny that you were a cowboy poet but never been on a horse.
I was a horseless cowboy poet.
Which is pretty funny.
Yeah. I did, when I did a lot of that, I traveled around a lot doing a lot. I had a pair of cowboy boots. I cut the tops off from them, and then I just took some duct tape and duct taped my legs above my tennis shoes.
Well, I remember you had that huge old garbage can on the stage, and your whole act was getting that all your apparatus on. You'd have big old hat, and you'd slide on your boots with the duct tape, and then your yak hair mustache. And then the cherry on top was the hubcap belt buckle.
Belt buckle, yeah, still got all that stuff.
So you personified all the stereotype of a cowboy.
Yeah, well, I kind of made fun of them a little bit, but in a sense, I could do that because I never was one, so that worked out. But this poem tells about two cowboys that were in a line shack, and they were riding for cattle and herding cattle and doing all this stuff. So here goes. Two cowboys were riding for cattle. It was early in the winter that year. They had plenty of provisions, but were short on cigarette papers, and that caused habitual fear. First, they tried a brown paper bag, too heavy, burnt too slow, and hard to drag. They tried TP, too light and fluffy, burnt too fast. Tobacco fell out, and it would not last. They tried magazines, too thick and slick and hard to burn. They didn't smoke much, but all about paper they did learn. The day they found that pocket Bible must have been purely heaven sent. They ripped out the first 2 pages and to rolling and smoking they went. The consistency of the paper was right and the size was fine. And as they smoked, tongue in cheek, it was divine. They started in Genesis, where all things started, as you know. They smoked all 53 pages in about 2 days or so. These two cowboys hurried through Exodus because it was a shorter book, you see. And this book deals with offerings, and these two were in too big a hurry to even pay heed. This is how it went all winter long as they smoked the testament of old. through Numbers, Kings, Psalms, Proverbs, and the book of Job. These cowboys smoked the Bible quicker than they could have read it, I am sure. Most folks ingest the Bible through their brains, but these cowboys' lungs had to endure. I would like to think before they smoked it, they read each and every page. But time was of the essence, depending on their nicotine rage. This deed and others will be judged later by God. But until that happens, I will help by writing this poem, because here on earth, that's my job.
I remember those. I know those Cowboys.
yeah. Well, I followed them around for 4 or 5 years, and they were a pretty good inspiration for me. Because if they were going to do anything, it was probably going to be exciting.
They probably deserve a little money from you for performing those poems and getting paid.
Well,
some sort of royalty check.
Yeah, these two cowboys. I'm not going to do this poem today, but it's quite long. But they went to Ukiah and they were riding for Tom Campbell and Leroy Britt up there, and it was raining. So it rained and rained and rained, and nothing happened. So they spent most of the riding down in the tavern at Ukiah. And the gist of this poem was the barmaid in there told them that they were having a lingerie party for the ladies of Ukiah down at the Antler, which was the hotel there in Ukiah. And so she kind of egged them on a little bit. And so they showed up there at this.
Crashed the party.
Yeah, they crashed the party, and they were drinking some kind of a Ukiah punch, which was
some sort of
fruit juice and 151 or something.
Geez.
Yeah. Anyhow, and things just went downhill from there. But one of these days we might do that if I can.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we could have one of them as a guest on the show.
Well, I don't know if he'd want to do that, but he might. You never know.
That's what I'm saying.
I like to bring in a guest poet every now and then, and this one here was written by Cassie Hobby.
You've done some her work too. That's about the old boys that drink beer in Dayville.
No, that was a different one. This one here is a little different.
Well, I know, but she's the same author.
Yeah, she's the same author.
Yes.
Yeah. She's passed on now, but she was of the Stevenson family out on Stevenson Mountain in Bear Creek. Said the Cross Triangle Brand's the name of this. The old cowboy stood at the door with his hat in his hand. His clothes were all dusty and his boots all covered with sand. He reached into his pocket for his Copenhagen can. Said, I came to ask you about that horse out there in the corral, the one with the Cross Triangle brand. I know that he's old and a bit stove up, but I knew him when he was just a pup. I sure hope he's for sale and the cost is not too high. The old cowboy smiled and said with a sigh, You see, mister, I used to own him many years ago, and things got real bad and I had to let him go. When he was young and full of pep, he was lank and lean and never out of step. When cutting out a cow, he knew his stuff. Oh, yes, he was fast and he was rough. He got the job done fast and with ease. He loved to work and he was sure to please. We were a pair, you see, many years past. To me, he's the only one. To me, he still has class. I'd sure like to have him back, and I hope you understand. I really need that old horse with the Cross Triangle brand.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, she did a great job. She was a great poet. She even wrote one about your grandpa after he passed away.
Oh, yeah.
We might do that one these days, too. I got, as you know, down by my store, I have, we might have done this one before, but this deserves to be done again and again and again just to get even with these cowboys. It's called Cowboy Coffee. As you know, I have the Route 26 Espresso place next to my place. And that's where this poem came from.
Okay.
It said, Cowboys have always been famous for the coffee they drink. Their coffee is not strong enough until a horseshoe will not sink. You could tell these were two cowboys. They looked and acted such. Facial hair covered their faces, though they were only mustaches. Wool vests they wore, kerchiefs the size of parachutes, for the finishing touch. You can imagine my surprise to see their rig in front of Route 26 Espresso Place. I couldn't let it go. I told them real cowboys didn't drink lattes, and for their profession, what a disgrace. They assured me they were drinking house coffee, but anyway, whatever they thought, they didn't care. I let them drive off, their reputation intact. I knew they were lying because both of them had foam and froth in their facial hair. I have another one that this happened at the same espresso place.
And
and it has nothing to do about coffee.
Another source of your
So if you look out the window, sometimes you can just you can really find inspiration. It's about the changing tides of the Cowboys and what we're up against now with this new raging cowboy thing. It says, traditions are changing out in the Old West, some for the worst, some for the best. For decades, cowboys were prideful of their horsemanship, but now have become hypocrite. Cowboys herd cows on a machine with 4 wheels instead of hooves, no saddle or no cushion place to sit. Like a horse, you still have to maintain this mechanical steed. You don't have to feed them hay or grain. Oil and gas is what you need. Well, make no mistake, they're just as dangerous as what they replaced. ATVs will buck you off, run you over, and put you in cowboy disgrace. They have to change the design and the name of their transportation trailer, for they haul horses no more. The bigger the trailer, the more ATVs they can haul. I've seen up to 4. Well, looking down from heaven, cowboys share no pride or joy. They are dismayed, disappointed as they see a new wave of something called a scooter cowboy.
I think it's even getting more. That you wrote that when they mostly rode 4-wheelers.
Yeah.
Well, now they got side
by
by
sides. Yeah. Well, they got to get a bigger trailer, now. But
but shoot,
yeah,
it saves a lot of miles on the old pickups.
Yeah, I wrote that about a cowboy named Dave McMichaels that comes over here and rides a little bit and everything. And we were happened to be down after he was riding for Gordon Tolton here a while back at Tiger Town, and I thought, man, I walk in there and all them cowboys, they'd be drinking beer,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you'd
think, like a nice light beer.
Yeah. So I walk in there and they're drinking this something that's in a martini glass, for goodness sake.
It was a French 57 or something.
French 75.
That's what it is.
Yeah, it's champagne and vodka and lemon or something. And, man, they were just putting them down like they were crazy, man. But, I noticed that they have developed a little class. When they when they wrapped their hand around that martini glass, that pinky was sticking out. But anyhow, all the other cowboys were in there, and I told them that I'd wrote this poem about Dave, and so now his new nickname is Scooter.
Well, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I wrote this one about. I just started writing this one, and I didn't know I was actually writing it about somebody until I got finished with it.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. And I'll tell you who I wrote it back after you listen to it.
Okay. I'll see if I can guess.
Yeah. There was age in his face and years in his eyes. Life had not been too kind to this man, you could tell. You could just surmise. Looking deeper into his faith, it was weathered and burnt. There were scars there, too, from past hard lessons learnt. His skinny legs were only slightly bowed, which was astonishing for all the miles he rode. As he tried to turn his head, you could tell he had a bad neck. This was associated with a header from a real bad horse wreck. He used to stand 6'2", but has been compressed down to 5'10" from banging into rocks, brush, and trees. His hands are gnarled with arthritis, and rheumatism has set into his knees. But he keeps on keeping on, and he will as long as he can. He thought he was brave and had courage when he was younger, but now he's starting to understand. He's paying for his decisions, and now with aches and pains are just interest on that loan. And now he's resolved himself to keep going until God calls him home.
Who's that about?
Joe Fitzgerald.
Oh, and you probably wrote that 10 years ago.
Yeah, when I wrote it from 2014.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But he keeps on going. We need to get Joe in here.
Yeah, I had, he
Next
might
time
want to defend himself.
It might be a good idea.
I don't know, I might have mentioned this before, but he was he carried the color for the Painted Hills Festival a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Ever since it started going. I think he missed last year or something because he had a little problem.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so he had, I think, who did it last year? Was it Dave McMichaels? Well, anyhow, Dave McMichaels was there. I don't know if he did it or not, but anyhow, Joe said, leading the colors this year for this year's Painted Hills Festival Parade is Joe Fitzgerald, as always. He's riding his famous deformed horse. Yes, he's a deformed horse. This horse has 2 A-holes on him. Joe said, "What'd he say? What'd he say?"
Yeah, well, that's when you did the announcing for the Painted Hills Festival. I
Yeah,
remember
right.
that.
Yeah.
You did that several times.
Yeah, I did that a lot.
I don't know if I'm probably not going to have that this year, huh?
No, I think it's been canceled, unfortunately. You know, like I say, you find all this stuff sometimes with, it comes to you just like, hey, Lord, thank you. But sometimes you wonder why he drops it in your lap, maybe to see if you will write something about it or something. But anyhow, Wheeler County has a history steeped in livestock, whether it be horses, cattle, or sheep. One of the very first families to settle here was the family Keys. They knew livestock and learned from back home in Tennessee. And this yarn deals with one of their offspring, a second-hand story relayed to me. Mike Keys, an employee of ODOT, was patrolling Highway 26, about milepost 54. Rounding a curve, he saw something white laying in the road. Looked like a horse, couldn't tell for sure. As he got closer, it was a horse. How did a wounded horse get in the middle of the road? What the hell? Being somewhat of a range detective, he started to investigate. The horse had jumped from a rim up above. Was it suicide, local weed, or just fate? The old horse was hurt bad and needed to be dispatched. Return to the office and get his personal gun. That was the plan he hatched. Back on the scene, he got behind the suffering horse for the humane shot. The gun fired and the horse suffering was over. Most likely as not. Something Mike had not planned on. The horse was giving a dying kick towards the ground. His rear leg stretched out and then his hoof dropped down. To this day, Mike remembers and still feels the remorse. That fateful day, his foot was broken by that dead horse.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
No, you got another one for us? We're about to run.
We about out of time?
Yeah.
Well, I got a couple in here. I don't know what this tape's on here for.
I don't know. Folks out there in the listening audience, Dad has reams and reams of poetry.
Oh, yeah, I know
put
what
together.
it is now. Yeah, let me get this out of here. And
Most of the
stand
time.
by. With a little airtime. Can we edit this out a little bit?
No, we'll be all right.
Oh,
You just
okay.
roll with it.
Oh, okay. Well,
That makes extra work for the
Okay.
producer, and we don't need that.
Oh, okay. We don't want to do that. Okay. Hell, that ain't what I wanted anyway. What the heck? Where'd that tape come from? What was I drinking last night?
Well, I'm pretty sure
Okay, here it is.
it might have been cough syrup.
Yeah, it might have been. Okay. Okay, it says, God created the world in 6 days, and on the 7th day, only then did he rest. Because on the 8th day, he knew he would face his most challenging and toughest test. He had to create something that could handle all the rough stock. It had to be able to ride all day, rain or snow, go without food, sleep on the ground, and take the shock. Now, God had already created the lowest forms of life. What could he make could handle all that abuse and all that strife? For incentive, God would use rewards like reputation, toughness, just to mention a few. God would have to make a never-ending supply because it would take more than one or two. Low pay, long hours, at the end of the tunnel there would be no light. What would you call or name this thing whose life would be devoid of fun and delight? Well, cowboy is what you call it. Why, the reason's not clear. You'll always be a cowboy no matter if you reach your 100th year. And when this world, as we know it, has ended and all things have come to pass, there will be three things left standing: cockroaches, coyotes, and cowboys, because they were built to last. That might be a good one to close out on.
Well, yeah, I'm always curious about the name Cowboy, though. It seems a rather kind of on the passive side. You would think they'd want to be called bull men, right?
Yeah, that bull men would be good, yeah. But, I don't know. Cowboys are usually pretty humble people and pretty down to earth, and they, until they started being scooter cowboys, I guess, maybe. But
well, that seems pretty humble to go from a horse to a scooter, actually.
Well, yeah.
Because it's more practical in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah, maybe. But easier to saddle. Cover more ground, maybe.
I think that's probably cheaper to maintain.
But I tell you one thing. You're not going to take a scooter where you took a horse very long.
No, that's true.
Well,
all right, well, what do you think?
We got the time in?
Well, we don't. I mean, it's up to you. You want to read another one?
Well, I could tell you about a funeral for an old cowboy.
Well, that sounds pretty good. Seems to be a fit ending.
Yeah, and it tells about. It's kind of like how they salute these old cowboys when they pass on to the next life. It said, this is a true story too. Actually, I didn't have to embellish it any. In eastern Oregon, when one passes, it is customary to celebrate the decedent's life. Folks gather at the interment, tell stories and tales about the honoree, leaving out his pain and strife. Most times spirits are involved, so bottles of such are passed around. The pallbearers are first, a toast is offered, a prayer or two, then the coffin is lowered into the ground. A few more salutes from the Bible. The last goodbyes are made. He sure was a good person, and all his debts were paid. The undertaker thought he should partake with the insistence of the folks. He did. He took quite a few snorts and headed home after his adieus were bid. Now, record's not kept on this, but I think this may have been a first. You see, the undertaker got a DUI while driving home in the hearse.
Well, they do drink a little whiskey at the cowboy funerals, I've noticed.
That couldn't happen anywhere else but Dayville.
Yep. As Cassie Hobbies attested to.
Yeah, before. Right. Yeah, just one more beer and then we'll all go.
Yeah, that's what the old hearse driver said.
Yeah, just one more drink and then we'll all go home.
Well, all right. Well, that does it for us.
Yep. We'll see you next time, and may the good Lord take a liking to you.
Amen.